Hello everyone, this is Andrew Peche with Andrew Peche Photography, and today's topic is how to start incorporating much longer focal lengths into your real estate photography. And I think this is one of those things where you may not use it, of course, every day in your real estate photography, but as you develop, I really feel that using longer focal lengths to show features such as, a golf course or a park, this is a technique that really enhances your photographs, okay? So you'll want to get in there and listen to this, and it's not an easy topic, so it's sort of easy to understand the basics behind it all, but then you're going to have to play with it. So no matter what level you are at, I think it's a good thing to start tinkering with in your photography, okay? So let's get in here and start looking at some examples and show you exactly what I'm talking about first. So this was shot at 12 millimeters. This is my bike there. And, this isn't going to be perfect. I didn't get the bike to scale in every photo or anything, but I just want to get the main point across that at 12 millimeters on a crop sensor, if you can see there, almost the entire photograph is the foreground, if you look at that. And if you can see way off in the distance there, this is the San Onofre nuclear power plant. You might not even be able to see it in this photo, but it's completely almost obscured, okay? So the stuff in the background for us is being totally obscured with a wide angle, and the foreground is just totally being, I can say, overemphasized, I think is the word, just completely overemphasized, okay? The tire on the bike, just everything is kind of being exaggerated, okay? And when we move to 28, the effect is lessening, and we're able to start seeing the power plant back there, and the foreground is being less emphasized, and things are starting to look a little bit more normal, at least as our eye sees it, okay? And when you get to 55 millimeters, things look pretty close to how we see it, okay? And the power plant's being pulled closer relative to, it appears to be closer, okay? I think that's a better way to say it. And the photo and the foreground, just in general, starting to look more normal, okay, for lack of a better word. And then here is 200 millimeters, all right, where you're really seeing the power plant being sort of at least appearing to be pulled closer to us. It looks like it's much closer than it really is in this photograph at 200 millimeters, okay? So what's happening is in our photos, all this space between the bike and that power plant, which is, I'd say, about a mile, it's about a mile away, I'd say, it's being compressed, and that can really do some good things for us in our photographs, okay? It's like we can kind of wander through one whole mile of area there with our eye if we compose something right, okay? So we're going to look at some examples of this so you can see more what I'm talking about. But here's just another look at it, the 12 millimeters, and the bike, and especially the tire, the rear tire there is really overemphasized, and then the 200, all right? And you can see the differences there. Okay, so here's one of the more stark examples, I feel. This is shot at the exact same location as the next photo you'll see. And this isn't bad. You could use something like this as what they call as an establishing shot in, the film industry, where you're just showing people kind of where you're at. You could use this in your set of photos if you wanted to show a park or a golf course or whatever it happens to be, even a beach, whatever. You could use a wide angle. I think this was shot at about 20 millimeters. But look at the next photo and really look at how much interest is added to the photo. We're almost able to walk through and touch all these people, almost like it's just really adding a lot of depth and interest when you shoot at 200 millimeters, which I did here, okay? And so we're almost able to our mind is almost able to wander through this entire beach, almost all the way to the, that far end down there. And we can almost feel like we can interact with all these people, especially in the foreground, even though they're probably, a good 100 feet apart from one another. In the photo, some of them look like they're, 3, 4, 5 feet apart, but they're not. So we're really able to get some nice depth. And the subjects, of course, are people here, which that may not be the case in your photographs, but maybe in your photographs, again, it's like 2 or 3 holes on a golf course, or kind of compressing a certain hole on a golf course that's really like a signature hole or something like that, you know. Anything you can think of that's interesting for people to look at, okay, that would be a feature in their area, all right? So here's just another quick example of kind of showing, and I'm not saying this is bad, I'm just saying to me it's not as interesting, but it's kind of a good way to establish with a wide angle. So this is shot at 12 millimeters. And then the next photos we're going to see are shot at 200 millimeters. And as you can see, it's the same beach, the same area. It's not necessarily the same place I was standing to shoot the last photo, but you can just, your eye can kind of wander through here all the way even into the background where there's a campground back there, okay? And your eye can just wander to all these people. And I think just in general, getting those longer focal lengths really emphasizes all this depth and interest, and it just makes it for a much more interesting photo, okay? If I shot from this same location with a really wide focal length, it would just all be foreground, just water, okay? Just a bunch of water. That would be the entire shot. And then the subjects in the scene, which in this particular photo, for lack of a better word, it happened to be people, which again, I know that's not going to be the case in most of your real estate photos, but you know, anything can be subjects like rocks or little hills or, you know, park or, you know, the play set in a park, the children's playland in a park, whatever can be your subject, okay? So this is just another image taken from that same area, and you can see that the background and those hills is being really pulled in closer relative to this other wide angle photo, okay? So these are just some more examples I'll go through of me shooting at, you know, longer focal lengths, 200 millimeters or thereabouts. And, you know, it's really worth it for you guys to go get a lens, you know, 200 or 300 millimeters. Maybe it's a zoom lens. I personally have a really cheap kit lens that goes from 55 to 200 that I bring out. It's not the greatest lens, but it really helps me sort of kind of change up, you know, some of my shooting that I do for people, you know, on real estate jobs, okay? So it really helps. So you're going to need a lens like that. And here's just another example where, again, you know, if you shot this with a wide angle, even if you were able to get close to these kids, the depth wouldn't be there. It would be just almost all water, you know, right in front of them. All that water that was going to be in your shot, that would be pretty much all that you could see, okay? It was water, like we saw in that initial example, all right? And again, this is just another example of kind of pulling everything together, pulling the background and that boat over there and the ocean and even that lifeguard tower closer, for lack of a better word, to the subject here on the bench. And it's just making it all feel like interesting, okay? And your mind can kind of wander and check things out. Again, if it was a wide angle, we would just see a huge park bench and the background would just be almost nothing, minimized to almost nothing, okay? And here are just a couple last examples of getting out there with, you know, close to 200 millimeters, which, and I forgot to mention, I'm shooting 200 millimeters on a crop sensor, right? So it's going to be about 300 millimeters on the whole 35 millimeter format, all right, for what I'm shooting with here, the lens. And again, one last example, this is the San Clemente Pier, and we're just able to see a few people. And, you know, again, like in this example, the waves could have been your subjects, right? If you wanted to do a actual real estate photo, you don't necessarily have to get people in, which I know is kind of a touchy subject. And then we're getting the pier in the background, and it's really kind of giving us that depth where there's a whole, you know, maybe quarter or a half a mile between these people and the pier. And yet our eye is able to wander through and kind of examine that entire area. So just a last couple notes I'll bring up. This is a tricky process, and I think one of the things you can kind of keep in mind is you a lot of times you're going to want to try and get a little elevated relative to your subjects, because if you're at the same level as them, it kind of compresses all that area that you're seeing right here in this photograph, and you're not able to see any of it. You know, it's compressing it all, but it turns into just a flat plane, okay? Like nothing is there. But if you're able to get elevated a little bit, just a tad, maybe 10, 20 feet up, it really, the mind is really able to wander through, because you're seeing that entire plane being compressed, and you're seeing all the subjects within that really long plane that you're compressing. It's the mind is able to wander in the photo, so it makes for a really interesting photo. Okay, so get up a lot of times, a little bit elevated. You're going to have to get far away a lot of times. It depends on how big your subject is. Is it a big golf course? Is it an ocean? Is it a beach? What is it? It depends. But a lot of times you're going to have to get far away from it with a longer focal length, right? All right, and the last thing I wanted to do here was just go to a website where I thought that they display a really good example of all this, and this is the Pelican Hill Resort near my house. And these are just images that are shot in this fashion that we're talking about. And just look at how beautiful this is, where this guy is obviously a very good photographer, and he's getting far away from his subject, somewhere far behind, of course, and he's out overlooking the ocean. He's getting up a little bit, you'll notice. And he's using a longer focal length, okay? And it's really, in this example here, it's really pulling that ocean in, even pulling these boats in, which he could have even Foleyed that in, but it's hard to know. But in general, just all these photos are very, very interesting, because you're getting to see all this area here, and it's being sort of compressed, and the mind can wander. I can imagine myself being anywhere in these areas, okay? And I'm getting to see that ocean view much better, right? Because I'm not at 12 millimeters. That would be just totally de-emphasized in all these photos if I was at 12 or 13 millimeters. If we shot this shot right here, any of them at 12 millimeters, we just see a gigantic mound of grass in the foreground, okay? Or a bunker, or whatever these are, sand trap. All right? So be on the lookout, for these photos, and give yourself ideas. And this is not easy. This is something that requires more planning and more scouting, maybe. And it's, again, not necessarily going to come up on every one of your real estate jobs. But, it's really good to keep this in mind. And I would say, in general, you are going to have to shoot parks at your, average 14 millimeters, whatever. But the point is, just be keeping this in mind. And I really think as the years go by, you're going to have a really strong arsenal of how to get some really amazing photos of amenities like this golf course or any other. So that'll do it for this time, guys. I thank you for listening, and I'll see you for the next one. All right, bye-bye.